that song again that I always feel should be Nigeria's anthem. We will defend our land.
Should we legislate for it?
Who's we?
The Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay, we shall send a bill.
For an act.
For an act. We could do that.
Yeah.
But I can assure you it will be thrown out.
Why? I mean, someone shall change the national anthem before.
Okay. Anyway, let's try and look at what is in front of us for now. We're trying to reform the correctional facilities in the country.
So isn't that also correction? We want to correct the national anthem.
Yes, that's correction as well. You know, the Nigerian correctional facilities, otherwise known as the prisons, they have a significant role to play in the management of the internal security of the country. But it is generally believed that persons sent to prison in this country come out as more hardened criminals. And it is a known fact that the Nigerian correctional facilities are yet to perform this role effectively of correcting, that is, effectively due to challenges such as inadequate funds, poor rehabilitation programs, the mixture of minor offenders with hardened criminals, and a whole list of other things. But our focus today is on how we can improve the workings of the correctional facilities. And it's my pleasure to welcome in our studio in Lagos, Mr. Benson Iwagu, who's an Executive Director, Prison Fellowship of Nigeria. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Glad to be here.
Also joining us from our studio in Abuja, we have Mr. Francis Enobore, who is National Spokesperson, National Correctional Service. Good morning to you.
Good morning, madam.
And we also have Uju Agomo, founder, Prisons Rehabilitation and Welfare Action Prawa. Thank you for joining us, Uju.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Let me begin with Mr. Enobore. All kinds of things have been said about the correctional service. But Nigerians were hoping that when the name was changed, a number of things were also going to change. But that doesn't seem to have happened. What's going on, sir?
Thank you very much for that question. It is important to note that the piece of legislative instrument that now drives the operations of the Nigerian Correctional Service, talking of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019, is a well-crafted instrument that is out to address a number of plethora challenges that the service has been passing through. I may not agree with you that nothing has changed ever since the name changed from prison to corrections. You will recall that on several occasions we have had to publish to Nigerians and world over the tremendous impact that educational opportunities that were made available to inmates, have been able to achieve. We have presently close to 1,000 inmates running different degree programs through the National Open University of Nigeria. We have others that are doing NCA program with Yewa College of Education in Ogun State. And we have a plethora of vocational trades to which we expose these inmates. Just a couple of months back, there was this inmate that discharged from one of our facilities in Gombe. This inmate came in without anything, no trade, no education. While he was in custody, he was trained in the act of knitting and weaving and dressmaking. He came out of the facility, established his own little outfit, of course, with the help of the aftercare system. He has so far been able to train well over 143 persons in his community in the acts which he learned in the prison. Amongst those that are running formal educational program. Presently, we have 5 that are doing their PhD program. I don't think a system that runs that has been able to put that tremendous, changes in the lives of offenders can be regarded as being static. I agree with you perfectly that we are not where we want to be and where we are supposed to be. But it's my hope that if we all put our hands together and get the appropriate funding from the government, will be able to do a lot to actualize and begin to activate the provisions in the new act that we are celebrating, that the whole world is celebrating, that everybody wants to see come to fruition. Okay. The new act, among the things we are expecting in the new act, is humanizing our custody of offenders.
Okay.
Beyond that, exposing them to adequate training.
We'll come to some of those issues that you have raised, Mr. Iwagu. But let me ask the madam next to you if she agrees with you. After all, she is all about prisoners' rehabilitation and welfare. Do you agree with him that indeed, since the change of name from prisons to correctional facilities, there has been an improvement?
Yeah, I would say that there are things that have been done following the passage of that law. Now, one of the critical things you can see right from the very first provision of that Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 is the fact that, of course, the name has changed, but then is this 2 composition, the non-custodial and the custodial component. If you also look at section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, it tells you the objectives. Now, one of those objectives is about ensuring that you implement non-custodial measures. Then, of course, the issue about rehabilitation, reformation, and reintegration. Let me just take one, which is the issue regarding the implementation of non-custodial measures. The whole of Part 2 of that Act also clearly states what needs to be done. So, in section 8 of the Act, it talks about the need to establish a directorate specifically on non-custodial measures. They have done that. The Nigerian Correctional Service have done that. They have also appointed the Deputy Controller General in charge of non-custodial. I'm aware that there are Assistant Controller Generals for both community service, another one for parole, another one for probation, another one for restorative justice, and another one to deal with other special measures that may be given by the court. Now, I'm aware that those is happening. I'm also aware that they have deputy controllers of corrections pursuant to the provision of that act in all the states of the Federation. I'm aware that some training have been done for all of the deputy controllers of corrections in charge of non-custodial across the country, and also in all the training institutions of the Nigerian Correctional Service in terms of training the people who are trainers to be able to train the others. But that's it. However, there are also a lot of other things that needs to be done. So if, for example, you look at section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, it gives you 4 major objectives of the new Act. The first is about enhancing human rights compliance and good correctional practices. The second is about non-custodial, which I just mentioned to you. The third is about full rehabilitation, reintegration, and resettlement. And the fourth is about maintaining or addressing the issue of overcrowding, and more specifically among awaiting trial persons. So I will tell you that basically on the issue of non-custodial, I've mentioned some of the things that have done. But however, there has not been enough funding. Actually, I'm told there has not been any funding dedicated for the full implementation of non-custodial, including having adequate staffing of that component. So what they are doing is utilizing the staff that they already have. So that needs to be done. This needs to be able to ensure that the activities of the non-custodial work in all the communities are properly funded in terms of equipment, in terms of vehicles, and all the rest of that. That is a challenge that hasn't been done. Okay. Secondly, let me also take one other example. Take the issue of security. If you look at the Act, you will clearly understand that within the remit of the Act, it clearly tells you that we need to put certain security gadgets, CCTV cameras, body scanners, and all the rest of that. Then you ask yourself, what has happened in all the maximum security facilities? Do we have that? Okay. Section 35, Section 34 of the Act talks about establishing female facilities in all the states of the Federation, establishing young offenders facilities in all the states of the Federation. That has not been fully complied with. So again, you can see there are trajectory of things that have to be done. But I think I must commend also the Nigerian Correctional Service for the things that they have done.
And I guess what they have been doing is utilizing the things that they can utilize within the existing resources and manpower that they have, hoping, I believe, that these things, in terms of the right funding and required to be done, has to be done.
Okay.
But again, I think that this is really
Madam,
where we need to address.
let me. There are so many things to unpack in
addressed.
some of the things that you've said already. But let's see if we can peel them one after the other. Well, by the way, I wrongfully called Mr. Enobore Mr. Iwagu the other time. Forgive me for that one. So Mr. Iwagu is here. I already gave your name to somebody else.
Good enough. I am here to defend my name.
Benson Iwagu, Executive Director, Prison Fellowship, Nigeria. Well, I don't know, you even know how to begin, this conversation from your own end. These facilities are supposed to be correctional from the very outlook. I mean, the people who are there, they committed offenses or crimes or whatever it is. They are presumed, but some of them have been convicted.
Some of them.
Okay. We understand that about 73% of the total number of inmates there are awaiting trial. Only 19 million plus out of 70 million inmates are only 19,000 out of 70,000 have been convicted. The others are awaiting trial and all of that. I'm wondering, what's your take on all of these? And already the prisons are the correctional facilities are 37% overcrowded.
Well, thank you for raising that notorious question. And one thing that flies in the face is the fact that if of your correctional establishment 70-something% are yet being processed, doesn't it tell you something about your criminal justice system? I think it does. That's one to keep in focus. Now, the other fact remains as well that, yes, a step has been taken in the right direction. At least there is supposed or assumed that by the 2019 Act, there has been a philosophical shift away from what it used to be under the Nigerian prisons, from deterrence and retribution to corrections and humane custodial conditions. I think that's a good step. However, the taste of the pudding, they say, is in the taste, in the eating. So, and we know that, for instance, look at how beautiful your studio is. If this infrastructure were not here, I'm sure it will impact your performance and your output. The same goes for the correctional establishment. I do feel, in fact, for the men and officers in that establishment, because they are dealing with human beings. And for that effort of reformation, rehabilitation, these are complex subjects. Reformation is an eclectic subject. It's not just one-way stuff thing. So if sufficient funding and infrastructure is not there, it's just like asking them to go to battle without appropriate weapons, not just weapons, appropriate weapons. Mm-hmm. The other point that I must make is the fact that we have said custodial, non-custodial. I think the first expression that should be given after funding is, let us have a rehabilitation and vocational center as the face of the non-custodial directorate. Because if you say non-custodial, crime is not just about picking pocket. There are things behind it. And if you're sending somebody to a non-custodial establishment for the same purpose, because I have not been told that the object or the objectives of custodial and non-custodial is different. It's all the same: reform, rehabilitate, reintegrate.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Enobore this notorious question that I'm pretty sure that you know would come. You may want to speak to why maybe it's part of those activities. There was this event that you know has gone viral. Everyone is talking about it now, where a murder suspect alleged to have committed murder participated in an event which I'm sure you are aware of. So why is it something that the prison service encourages? Why did that event hold? And you know, it was all in the face of the media, so to speak.
Why publicize it?
Thank you very much. Please, before addressing that question you just raised, let me quickly correct an impression raised by Barrister Iwagu. The non-custodial component of the Nigerian Correctional Service actually stands to address a number of issues. Number one, now, we do not have to take every minor infraction to custodial treatment. And I can tell you, a couple of months back during COVID-19, when a lot of measures were put in place, curfew, obeying COVID-19 protocol and all of that, those that violated those simple instructions, we were able to use non-custodial arm of the service to treat well over 20,000 offenders. You can imagine what the situation would have been if they were all hauled into a custodial facility to compound the already worse situation in that environment. And beyond that, we now have a component of probation, parole, restorative justice, all constituting the non-custodial component. Some of them, well, for want of time, I will not be able to delve into the details of each of these components. But it suffices to mention that parole, for instance, stands to decongest the system because you no longer have inmates serving all their entire jail term behind bars. They now have opportunity to be released on parole, to be supervised by a parole officer. Part of the term they will spend under parole will no longer be within the confines of the prison. Now, coming to the question you raised about the event that just happened in Lagos. First, I want to let you know that that event, the beauty pageant that seemed to have stolen the show, happened to be one out of the many events that were put together that day. And I will also let you know that it's not the first time that we are encouraging psychosocial programs. We bring in a number of engagement activities, social engagement activities. First, to calm the inmates, to put them in a stabilized and manner, in the right frame of mind with emotional stability, to be able to answer the allegation they are facing. What we did, I believe, has no way of vitiating the case that is being tried in court. We run a system that does not encourage discrimination. So where you are there, whether you are a convict or an awaiting trial, our rule of engagement says you should not be discriminated against when it comes to psychosocial support. So the lady participated in that event. Surprisingly, a number of media organizations that called me, both within and outside the country, they had cause to commend the service for, coming out from the retributive system in the past that never took us anywhere to a system that looks at the future of the offender, the character in question. Let us take her out of the program, because the program was not organized to celebrate any individual. The program featured speech writing, it featured drama, it featured a dancing competition, and so many other competitions. There are other ladies that are facing even worse crime than her in that facility. They all participated in the event. They won different prizes in the different segment of the program. I can understand the feeling of some people that the suspect is alleged to have killed a celebrity, and I can understand the policy. I mean, the angle they are looking at it, but in the overall, we run a system that is driven by law, And
do you
we
also,
do not do anything that the law does
Mr.
not allow
Onobore,
us to do.
Do you also,
beyond that,
just a second,
we
just
needed
1 second.
to put this individual needs to be.
Just 1 second. While you operate a system that operates, you know, based on law and human rights and all those things, does it also factor in the moral suasion of the society? Someone who's rightly or wrongly, the accusation against her is as grievous as it is. Well, you said that there are those who may have committed worse offenses, but they are not as celebrated. And there are those who are wondering, hey, wait a minute. The people whose lives have been affected by the person that died as a result of the activity of us, alleged activity of this suspect, you know, may not have found closure.
Yeah.
Is this something that the service also factors in? That, okay, there is a moral angle to these things sometimes. You know, what's your take on that?
Thank you very much. Sometimes you need to balance issue of morality, law, and what an organization is established to accomplish. And I want to tell you categorically that some of these things that we do, they have a way of increasing and enhancing cost of justice. If you prepare an offender that is, or an alleged offender, in the right frame of mind to have emotional stability to answer to his or her crime, I think you'll be helping the cause of justice. If you keep, I want to believe that no one will be encouraging that awaiting trial persons should be kept in such a condition that they will be emotionally disturbed, destroyed, and by the time they are produced in court, they won't be able to answer to the case they are facing. And I want to also add that when you encourage inmates to participate in social activities like this and they relax their mind, you may be able to dig into some naughty areas that the investigative arm of the justice dispensation has not been able to unknot. It is in that frame of mind, that relaxed atmosphere, that some of them will open up to tell you, look, this was exactly what happened. And in the past, we have used such opportunity, we have harvested quality information from such engagement to and shared with our sister security agencies to assist them in addressing some crime and criminality that they have not been able to address while the inmates were in their custody. So it is a question of
Mr. Nobere, before you go on, Mr. Nobere, please, before you go on, you said that there are other women who took part in this pageant who have committed worse crimes. Please educate us. What is worse than murder that she's suspected of?
Yes, yes. I'm not trying to water down the crime she's alleged to have committed, but I want to tell you that when I said worse crime, there are some that are accused of killing more than 1 or 2 persons at a go. Well, if you need the detail, I'm sure if you go to that facility, they'll be able to tell you.
Murder
there are
is
some
murder.
Individuals there that, yes, a number of children, maybe her mates, children, gather them and snuff the life out of them. Very young, innocent children that have not offended anyone. Yes, no offense is worse than murder, but the circumstances under which some crimes are committed and the victims involved, you almost be tempted to say, wow, this is really terrible. They are there. We are not taking side with anyone. Our own is to prepare everybody to be able to answer the allegation that is posed against the person. If you have blood in your hand,
all right,
what we have done has no way of vitiating your trial, and you must face the allegation that is presented.
Uju, you are of the Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action. In your experience, what kinds of people are you rehabilitating, and how exactly are you rehabilitating them? What are you taking them, I mean, when they come out, what kind of things do they do after you have rehabilitated them, sort of?
Thank you very much for that question. But there is a very important thing that happened during Mr. Francis Nobore's explanation that I think it is important to flag. I think the whole of what is happening here is the fact that there is a need to push the issue about victims' rights. We should not lose sight of it. This is actually the hallmark of restorative justice. If you look at the Part 2 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, it clearly states that these restorative justice, including victim offender mediation, family group conferencing, and the rest of that, including community circles and all the rest of that, is important to happen, and it needs to happen all across the criminal justice process, before you get in at the police stage, at the trial stage, even after sentencing, even after you have served your sentence. So I think what we must do as a people, as a nation, is that we must ask the critical questions. What are we doing for victims? That does not vitiate what needs to happen for the offender. And I'm going to come back to the issue of that offender. That is the balance. Oputa did mention this. The true justice sits on a tripod. And what is that tripod? Looking at what needs to happen to the offender. Because that offender, unless the offender dies in custody, is going to come out someday, or unless the person has a life sentence. Yeah? Because the person is going to come that someday in the society, you need to be ensured that you do whatever needs to be done to reduce the risk of that person reoffending. And that's very critical. The second is the victim. We must take care of the psychological needs of this victim. We must take care of providing adequate information for the victim all through the trial process, all through. Remember, even whenever there is a crime committed, even if you are not sure of who the offender is, the victim has already suffered some harm, some pain, and that person needs to be supported. That group of persons, whether it's an direct victim in the case of the person who had suffered that, maybe somebody who had an assault or whatever it is, or it is the secondary victim, like the families of somebody who has been killed. The third is the society. So I think that this discussion is really a discussion bringing up to the bar side, saying, what as a nation are we doing for victims to help
on
here?
that, exactly,
what
Madam,
are we doing
just
to
one
ensure
second,
that the
on that
offenders
issue
are dealt with?
that you just raised now, on what is being done for the victim, and I suspect you are inferring, conversation around the questions put to Mr. Enobore the other time. Would you say
yes, for the
that
family,
with this event, just a second, that with this event that's been so widely publicized and in some quarters criticized, would you say that the victim was even considered by the correctional service?
No, this is what I just want us to have this in perspective. First, let me make this very clear, okay? First of all, we need to understand, again, I think it's also important all the time when we talk about people who are in custody, that we know there are three types. There are the innocent, there are the minor offenders, and there are serious offenders. There are instances where even that somebody would say, I did a particular thing, and then maybe through DNA testing and things like that, they find out it wasn't that person. So it's important to understand that the whole gamut of rehabilitation and reformation needs to be for all classes of persons in facilities, in custodial facilities. Now, for the victim I'm talking about, is the families of the person who have been killed. Is the families of the persons who have been hurt. And I think that we're not doing enough as a nation. We're not. The same time, we had a little program that we did, which was like witness support.
When you say we are not doing enough as a nation, just a second, Madam. When you say as a people, just one second, Madam, just a second. When you say we have not done enough as a nation, I'll assume that someone needs to take the lead. Now, who should be taking the lead? Just a second, madam. Just a second. Who should be taking the lead in this? Because the fingers are now pointing at the correctional service for not being sensitive to these particular victims that you're talking about, which are the families.
Let me tell you who should take a lead. Depending on the particular stage of processing of that person. One part of it is that the police, the very first time that a case has happened, and the police have apprehended offender, or even that the witness or the victim has come to report, there needs to be sensitivity at that point. There needs to be adequate support. There needs to be protection for the victim. There needs to be a process that says, yes, I hear you. Yes, I'm able to address your psychological needs and your pain while we go through that trial. So the police need to do that. At the court stage, we need to also ensure that that is also done, including things about providing support even during trial for them. And then you follow through. Now, while the person is in facility in the custodial center. That is what is captured under the Part 2 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019. In terms of restorative justice, the restorative justice element is saying that you yourself, as an offender, you need to be able to get a point of closure to say, yes, I am willing to go and say to my victim, I am sorry. I am willing to enable that victim have a closure. And please remember that this does not matter whether you are given a community sanction or even whether you have served the terms of custody. And that's why if you look at the issue about restorative justice, that even when you have finished serving and you are going to the community, going back to the community, you are being encouraged to be able to go back and have a process facilitated by the non-custodial officers, because that is also what we are working on.
We have run completely out of time.
I just want to ask this question. Madam, what is the role, in all of this you've mentioned the police and the courts and all, what is the role for the correctional facilities in this victims, whatever that you're talking about?
The role of the correctional service can come in two parts. One is the issue that you see that is provided for them through the restorative justice angle. Second is also the issue which you find that either in terms of what the welfare officers are being taught to do, or what the aftercare officers are being taught to do, or what the community correctional officers are being taught to do. Don't forget that the primary job of the correctional officers is about the offender that is in their custody. However, the new act
we have run completely out of time.
Beyond these people, you can work with the offender to be able to also have the inroad in terms of helping with the victims in terms of that level of reconciliation and
Uju Agomo, founder, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, Prawa. I'm sorry we've run completely out of time, but for me, the way this conversation has gone, we've only just started this conversation, which means that we need to bring you all back some other time to look at these issues, because we have by no means got to the bottom of it yet. Uju Agomo, founder, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, Prawa, as well as Francis Enobore, national spokesperson, National Correctional Service, both of whom joined us from our studio in Abuja. And we had in our studio in Lagos, Mr. Benson Iwoagu, Executive Director, Prison Fellowship, Nigeria. Thank you all for coming to join us in this conversation this morning. This conversation has only just begun. Join us after this timeout.